our next panel will echo the same sentiment of stressing the importance of getting the right talent on board in order to ensure the continuous growth of our enterprise.
سيترأس سعيد النوفلي مدير N5 مناقشة ما يلزم لبناء فريق ناجح في شركة ناشئة، وسيشاركه المناقشة حسين وهبي رائد أعمال ومستشار حكومي سابق، وإلياس تسخلاكس مدير إدارة ايوا، وعبد الرحمن ريزيليا المؤسس والمدير التنفيذي لشركة ARC Talent.
Saeed Al-Nofeli, Director N5, will lead a discussion on what it takes to build a founding team that sets up a startup for success. And his panelists are Hussein Wehbe, entrepreneur and former government advisor, Elias Tsikhlakis, MD eyewa, and Abdul-Rahman Risilia, founder and CEO of ARC Talent. Guys, the stage is yours.
Hi everyone, Assalamu alaikum. Today, honestly, I'm so excited first to be here, and CEF itself is really dear to my heart because I was with the first team that actually started CEF version 1. And today I'm speaking here with an amazing panel and with great experience. And I would like to take this opportunity first to thank you for joining us today and discussing a topic that is really dear to my heart as well, because for the past, I would say, 5 years I've been training entrepreneurs. And alhamdulillah, I've graduated with Shira only more than 100 entrepreneurs coming out of the incubators and seed program. So today we have an amazing panel with amazing experience. We have Abdul-Rahman who's joining us. I would call you the talent hunter. Yeah, and then we have Elias from eyewa. eyewa is a e-commerce eyewear company, which is done incredibly in the ecosystem, and I love our discussion, and we'll go in deep into this. And we have Hussein Wehbe, an amazing entrepreneur. I will leave it in our discussion to talk about the details. But I think first of all, I want to ask a question, and I think we'll start with Abdul-Rahman. Is for your organization, I would say, how long did it take you to build the dream team, the team that you have?
We're still building.
Still, huh?
It's never ending. But you do need to figure out internally exactly what that dream team does look like. And as you work towards that, you're going to have some slight pivots here and there. But the core foundation of that dream team has to be determined internally with the key stakeholders in that organization. So we are constantly evolving, constantly building that so-called dream team. But the foundations, the key elements, they have to come early.
Very nice, very nice. So still building, still looking how you grow the organization itself. How about you, Elias?
It's, as Abdul-Rahman said, it's a never-ending process. You know, every time you kind of fill a hole or plug a gap, another one emerges as you continue to grow your organization, as the landscape continues to shift. So it's a never-ending process.
But do you feel that, okay, this is the, let's say, you know, it's different when you have a team that is, let's say, 5 or 10 people comparing to 200.
Correct.
Right? So is it different than previously when you had a small team, or how did it work?
Of course, it's much different because, you know, when you're a small team, it's easier to have someone come in, easier to have them meet everyone, integrate well with the culture, etc. Now that we're a bigger company, on the one hand, it's a bit easier to find talent because you're more well-known, you know, the network's larger, so people want to come work for you, whereas when you're just 5 people, they don't know who you are, so it's a big risk for them. But on the flip side, then it's harder to find someone that, you know, necessarily meshes with your values because you have so many different people now. It's difficult to have them integrate and meet everyone. So, you know, it's different.
Yeah.
Neither is easier, neither is harder.
Yeah. Okay. What about you, Hussein? What are your thoughts? I know you work for amazing, big startups, I would say.
Well, my experience is a bit different because I worked in big multinationals and I enjoyed building teams, but not from scratch. It was never about building a team from scratch. It was more of building a team within a team itself. And sometimes when you have change management, you have restructuring, it takes you back as if you're building from scratch. That was one of the experiences. Today, I'm an entrepreneur for the first time ever on stage because I decided to venture on my own. And this is where I'm going to enjoy maybe leveraging on the experience of how to build a team in the corporate world, in a small company, in a startup, to bring in the best team, or what I call usually the dream team.
Nice. Thank you. I have a question for Elias. When it comes to, because we discussed in the speaker lounge that when you guys started, it was 3 of you who started eyewa. And I wanted to know about how do you build a culture around eyewa? Because the thing is like, okay, we're startup founders, we're really excited, boom, and we're hitting our numbers and everything. But when you grow as a big organization, you want to build a culture that you love. So how did you guys go on about it? And did it come naturally from the team members, or it headed that way, or did you reach that level yet?
So culture is very important to us at eyewa. The 2 founders, Anas and Mehdi, myself as the first member that joined them, part of the founding team, we all come from very similar backgrounds, very similar education, even working together before starting eyewa. And there were some pillars, if you will, that were set up from the very beginning. 1, to put our customer first. 2, to be fair, which is to our team members and to customers. They called it the leitmotif, like the reason for doing it. And so we have these pillars that are very core to the eyewa culture that still carry through here almost 5 years later. So that's what we kind of did. And now we're working as suddenly, we exploded from being 3 people, we're nearly 200 people now. We have people, we have big operations in 2 countries, UAE and Saudi, but we have a lot of people remotely. There's people that joined our company that we never met in person because they joined remotely, be it in South Africa, be it in India. And so now what we're trying to do is, with our people team, is structure and formalize how that culture, if you will, can resonate throughout all different aspects of our organization, be it to the remote people, be it to the people in our retail stores as we expand our retail stores, be it to the people in our head office, so on and so forth.
Nice. I have a question for Hussein. We discussed this, I think, yesterday regarding building the culture that you want. When we work for large organizations, it's not easy for you to actually control that culture. 100%. But when you're building a startup, it's a bit different because these are the things, the team that you're picking and so on. So what are your take on this?
Definitely, I think the culture, the way I call it is, the culture is the soul, the DNA, and the life of the company. If you don't build it from scratch in a proper way as a foundation for the organization, you will fail. If you come from the corporate world and you struggle from a tough culture, a rigid culture, a culture which lacks empowerment, which lacks all the basic requirements of a good culture, I think you're going to do a great job in a small startup because you're going to build a culture which is totally opposite to what you have struggled from in a big organization. I think culture is the number 1 thing that every founder should think about because, as I said, it's the foundation for the organization and it's the base to what's going to come next.
Excellent. Thank you so much. I have a question for you, Abdul-Rahman. And since I called you a talent hunter, I have a question of what is your top ingredients in finding the right talent, especially in this region, because we are in UAE.
You know what? I'm going to go something a little bit different. It's the clients that we work with. Too many times we've seen, or we've worked with companies where they weren't sure what they were looking for. When you don't know what you're looking for, you're not going to find it, okay? And it's not just a job title. It's not just a head of tech or a senior product manager. You need to know the specifics on what you're looking for, and more importantly, why you need this individual and what impact that individual is having on your business. And more importantly, what impact it's going to have on your business if you don't have that person there. When the founders, when the leads in this business actually start thinking this way and start truly understanding what they're actually looking for, it makes my job a hell of a lot easier.
Nice. You know, 8 years ago, I started a startup in the hardware space, and we were 3 of us who were from the corporate world, and we, working together. And one of the software developers, we brought him in and we started working, and then we told him to move into a different space, like basically explore and learn, and he didn't want to do it. And it was very difficult because the mindset that we wanted is someone who can learn, even though he has experience, but he's ready to explore. And it was very difficult to actually bring that person in and make him aligned with what our vision is. So it's you have to be specific.
You have to be.
Especially when you actually grow. Yeah.
Especially when you're talking to these people and everyone's talking to the same people.
Yes.
Everyone's going after the same talent. So if you don't truly know what you or understand what you're looking for, exactly how are you going to put them through your process? The candidate journey is so undervalued and so sort of ill-prepared, especially in this region right now. So when you know what you're looking for, and then each touch point in every business, whether it be the founders, whether it be the CTO, whether it be the head of product that they're talking to, everyone needs to live and breathe these values, these pillars that Elias was talking about. Everyone needs to understand what this culture really means. So when that candidate goes through that journey, each touch point is consistent.
Yeah.
And then they buy into the business, they buy into the individuals that they're meeting with, they buy into the overall idea and the business as a whole, and then the recruitment process becomes so much easier.
Excellent. Elias, question for you. Do you prefer a driven graduate or a working, like an experienced professional when it comes to hiring?
Look, it really depends on what you're hiring for and the stage you're in. I'd say in the early eyewa days, when we're still figuring stuff out and going about it, a driven graduate is a lot more valuable. Like in many ways, that was kind of what I was. I had some years of experience behind me, but I came in, jack of all trades, and I just did what needed to be done. Now, 4 years in, as we're more structured, we have clearer verticals. We are looking for people to come in and be specialists, someone that can, knows operations in and out, someone that knows warehousing or last mile delivery in and out, someone that knows how to run a retail store in and out. At the same time, we are still looking for motivated fresh graduates for other areas of growth. So it really depends on where you are in your journey as a startup and what it is you're trying to achieve, because each has their merits.
Nice, nice. I have a question for you, Abdul-Rahman, again. When it comes to, the industry is currently evolving and there is new job demands and, it's growing so quick. What are the top talent that are highly, do we call it demandable or in demand?
You know these answers. Tech, product, design.
And how difficult is it to find this talent?
We've seen it on LinkedIn. There's bold statements, a war on talent. Everyone's fighting over the same people. Everyone's looking for these skill sets, basic skill sets, front-end developers, back-end developers. People are fighting over them at the moment. Everyone needs it. Everyone needs these types of people. So there are people here where we're forced to even go abroad to try and bring them here as well, because there's just not enough talent at the moment. It's a war on talent.
Yeah, absolutely. What about you, Elias?
I would agree with Abdul-Rahman. Where we see a lot of challenges are in the product and tech fields. These are very in-demand jobs today, given the last few years, how the trends have been, and more companies adopting the digital trend. So that is where really we see peak demand, be it from being able to hire talent to being able to retain the talent we have.
Yeah, and like what you mentioned earlier as well, is that first there is a specific skill set that you look at the moment where you are or where the company is? For example, currently, because you're growing in retail, comparing to before when you was a tech, let's say e-commerce is a bit different, right? So yeah, so it's different. So
Absolutely.
what about you, Hussein, when it comes to finding the talent on your experience working for Fetcher and these companies,
And I believe,
UPS and
in most of the companies, I always look for the soft skills. This is the first thing I look into, because the moment you have those great people who have the right attitude and the best soft skills, then I think the technical things can be taught. Of course, you're not going to get an engineer to do sales. However, I think soft skills are very important. For me personally, I look into the attitude, into the character, and of course, the experience makes a big difference as well. But if you tell me get somebody fresh with a good attitude, I will take that.
Nice. I have a question when it comes to, you guys heard about the golden visa, and and we're talking about talent, and UAE has been proactive when it comes to promoting, talent within the region. What are your thoughts on this one, Abdul-Rahman?
On the golden visa?
On the golden visa and all these initiatives to support entrepreneurs, special talent, engineers, and people from different fields. Do you think that helps retaining talent in this region or in UAE?
I find myself talking about this quite a bit, and I think one of the few positives that came out of the COVID pandemic is this push and drive towards this sort of ecosystem that we're in right now. And one thing that I think I'm super excited about is the gig economy in this region. We're nowhere near other parts of the world like North America and Europe. So when that gig economy starts ramping up in the UAE and in the wider region here in MENA, we're going to see some obscene talent coming through the doors, because that's where you see, and coming from more mature markets like Europe or like North America, where I've worked in these spaces, you predominantly see the high-end talent, they're on freelance. They do a 6-month contract here, they do an 8-month contract there, they go where the hot work is, they do their job, and they leave. Now, if I'm a larger corporate like Majid Al Futtaim, and I need to ramp up my Carrefour business, and I'm hiring 90 developers, but I only need them for 12 months, but I'm hiring them on a full-time basis, with gratuity, with visas, with medical insurance. I'm doing all this, and after 12 months, do I have to let them go? Or should I just hire 90 developers on freelance and pump up this gig economy here in the region? That will eventually happen, inshallah. And when that happens, the ecosystem in this tech world is going to be fantastic.
Don't you think the new generation are actually heading towards that? Because I hired someone who didn't want to go full time. He said, no, I'm going to be a freelancer, and that's what I want to be.
It's that flexibility, it's that empowerment where they are in full control. We use the term freedom. They have freedom to work wherever, whenever they want. And in a digital world, they can. So why not start doing it here, right? So this is the really exciting part.
Wow. I'm really looking forward to that.
Yeah.
Inshallah. Elias, I have a question for you. When it comes to investors, and I've seen this a couple of years ago, that most investors will go for or invest in talent or people who come from the consultancy background. And I've looked at, you came from consultancy background. What are your thoughts on this? And do you feel that with things are coming up, do you feel that investors are going to look at other areas of talent, I would say? I know it's a tough question, but yeah. Do you think that your consultancy experience helped you?
I mean, myself and the founders, we all used to work for management consultancy. Did that help us? Absolutely. Because, we wore many hats, we were exposed to many different industries, we spoke to many different people, so we had a big network. We knew how to pitch, to present in a way that many other founders or startups might not know. But to answer your question, I don't actually agree that investors are looking particularly or specifically to invest in startups that have a management team or founding team that is comprised of ex-consultants. I think it really just comes down to what is it that you're trying to build and achieve? You know, does that make sense? Is the market right for it? Do you have the right, you know, go-to-market and strategy? So as long as that's sealed in, that's like 85, 90% of the job. Then the last 5 to 10% of it is, you know, marketing it and making sure that you leverage the networks you have and you're able to get those investors' attentions and buy-in very quickly. So if you can manage that, you know, you don't have to be a management consultant to do that part. It helps. It helps teach us how to present well and do all that, but you don't have to come from that background to achieve that.
Yeah. And I think because I think the people who come from management consultancy are like, you know, I think they want to, because it's business, right? So it's they're well into that. And I think because our ecosystem also has evolved and people are into entrepreneurship and stuff, it's not like before. Because I came from an engineering background and I studied I actually studied engineering school and I worked for complex projects, and it was like I had to learn all these business and it was difficult. It took me time, but I got there eventually. And I think with the support of the government and the education, entrepreneurial education is there, it actually supports big time. So I have a question when it comes to Hussein, when it comes to leadership and growing the team into a leadership role, because you know when you work for a company and then you know that some of the team will grow, some of them will not grow. So do you have, from experience perspective, how have you seen founders or the company grow their employees into a specific role? Because you know, it's when it comes to startup, it's like they're starting young and they're experimenting and so on, and then they move into bigger scale, is growing it to other regions and so on. So what are your thoughts on this?
Just if I understood your question, you're talking about growing leadership
Yes.
inside startups.
Yes.
Well, I don't think it's a challenge as long as the startup itself is focusing on growing those leaders to become maybe the next generation of this company. The biggest mistake that startups usually do is everything is with the founders. The founders and the co-founders will do everything and they don't really delegate. I've seen this maybe a lot because they're a bit afraid and scared about something can go wrong during the early stages. I believe if they hire the right people from day one and they trust them and they delegate to them, delegation is very important, especially in small businesses. Although the fear factor is always there, because as I told you, I've seen it, a mistake can crash a company sometimes. However, with proper delegation, with proper leading by example, they can build the second layer of leaders. Because in the end, the founders will start doing sales, customer experience, accounting, everything during the initial days. However, when they scale up and grow, they cannot do this. So they have to prepare people behind them to start taking over those. And I always insist about promoting from within. Very important. When you give them the DNA of the organization and they learn everything, then I think they can take over and grow gradually.
Yeah. So one last question, and I want to ask you this question, since you're the talent hunter.
That's my nickname now, isn't it? Talent hunter.
So one last question is, what do you advise a working professional or a student who wants to take the jump from a corporate job, let's say a working professional who's wanting to take the jump from a corporate good paid job to join a startup?
I'd ask them what their motives are, okay? And if their motives are aligned with what the startup's internal sort of brand is and what their sort of culture is, then go for it. We mentioned it earlier, just some people just don't have it. Some people just, and that's okay. If you're meant to work in a corporate environment, that's fantastic. It's a great career for you. If you want to go into the startup ecosystem, then you need to be built for it. You need to be willing to sometimes pivot, wear different hats, do different things that aren't really in your job description, because that's what you're doing, especially in the early stages in a startup. You're going to be doing things that are going to be out of your jurisdiction, but you still have to do it anyway, because that's what you need to do. Everyone, all hands on deck, and I'm sure you can vouch for this. You know, in the early days, everyone's rolling up their sleeves, everyone's doing things. You may have set up a first retail store just to be involved. That's what you do.
Yeah.
If you don't have that inner desire to do that, it's okay. Stay in the corporate world. It's an amazing career for you. But this is what I think Hussein mentioned. It can't be taught.
Yeah.
You can't teach someone to want to be an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
That person is just built that way, is born that way.
Yeah.
More often than not, anyway.
Excellent. Thank you so much, guys. I really appreciate it, and I
Pleasure.
enjoyed the session. Thank you, guys, for listening.
Thank you.
Take care. Thank you so much. Anama.